Welcome to another episode of Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, where certified financial planner Loren Sherman shares thoughts on having a healthy mind, body, and spirit, an abundance of wealth inside portfolios and out, and lessons learned from clients and mentors over the years.
Welcome to another Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement. We have a little bit of a longer episode for you today, so this is one where you'll want to carve out some time and relax, particularly since our topic today is about rest. Jason Gunkel joins me to discuss the idea of rest and shares his experience of taking a 6-week sabbatical from work. Jason is a friend and fellow financial advisor in the local area for a firm called Syverson Strege. A quick note before we jump into this conversation: the remainder of this episode is recorded in video format. You will likely only have the audio version through your podcast app, so to watch this episode, head over to YouTube and find our channel, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement. So with that, let's jump into the conversation with Jason Gunkel. All right. Well, I want to welcome in our audience to another Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement. Of course, I am your host, Loren Sherman, and today I'll be chatting with Jason Gunkel, who is a financial advisor himself and chief investment officer of a local West Des Moines firm called Syverson Strege. So Jason, welcome in and thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
So the idea of resting and recharging is what we're talking about today. And it's always been something that we've heard, but a little over a year ago, I'll give you a little bit of my background into this. Pastor Jeremy gave a talk at Hope West Des Moines. He gave a sermon titled How to Rest. And I liked it. I thought it was interesting. And then shortly thereafter, in our Kingdom Advisor study group, the topic of the month was titled Win at Work and Succeed at Life. I don't know if you remember that one. That was Michael Hyatt. And
I do remember that one.
Yeah. So once again, there, the theme was rest and kind of strangely enough, the power of non-achievement, which is hard for a lot of people to grasp, especially if they're naturally driven. That's hard to wrap your head around. And then if we fast forward, so that was all the fall of 2022. And if we fast forward to spring of 2023, I think that was when you shared with the group that you were going to be taking this sabbatical in the summer of 2023. So I felt like this topic of rest was right in front of me on several occasions. So I thought it'd make for a great topic of discussion today. And then in part two, if you want to call it that, of our conversation, we'll do a little bit of highlighting the firm you're at called Syverson Strege, give you a chance to just discuss some of the ways that you guys might be different than other financial advisory firms, what you do particularly well, and just share some of your experiences and in the industry in general. But I guess maybe to start off with, I'll give our audience just a little bit of a background of how we got to know each other, because I don't know how many years ago this happened, but I started coming to these in-person groups that we'd get together once per month with a handful of other local financial advisors, and we'd go through this Kingdom Advisors material, essentially discussing financial planning topics through a biblical perspective. I don't know if that's an accurate description or if you'd say it any better.
I think that's a good description. Yep, it can be pretty broad, but
sure.
Biblical principles, yes, is a good way to put it.
And one thing I've always thought that was really cool about that group is that even though technically we're all competitors because we all work for different firms, there's an attitude of abundance and sharing ideas where everyone is, there to get better and share ideas with each other. So it's not, it's not this scarcity mentality. I feel like sometimes people can have that right when they first get into the industry, where you think there's never going to be enough people. So I want to be sure I'm keeping them all to myself. And once you've been in this industry for a handful of years, you hopefully can transition more to that abundance mentality where, you refer a client to someone else if they're maybe a better fit for them than you. So, but I guess before we jump right in to the sabbatical side of things, do you mind giving us a quick background of yourself, maybe your family, how you got into this business in the first place, if that's an interesting story?
Yeah, you bet. Well, I guess I'm originally from North Dakota, and some people find that interesting that they don't know many people from North Dakota.
Even colder up there, right?
It's even colder. And I came down to Des Moines to go to college. I went to Drake, and I was lied to a little bit of how warm it was down here. They said the winters were very nice down here. I would say they're nicer, but we know how cold it still gets in Des Moines, although we're having a beautiful winter this time
Sure.
around. But I've got a nice family. My wife is a teacher. I've got 3 kids, ages 8, 6, and now coming up on 2. So still kind of a busy household.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I guess how I got into the industry, I was pretty focused, I guess, at a young age of getting into finance. And I can remember, when I was in junior high, my dad got me and my brother into investing, and showed us Morningstar and how to analyze a mutual fund. And I still remember kind of picking our own mutual funds to invest in at a pretty...
That's not something every parent would help with.
Yeah. So, that piqued my interest for sure. And I guess I was pretty focused then, thinking I wanted to go into finance. I was going to be a doctor for a while until I figured out I hated science, or at least couldn't stand the sight of blood, and would pass out in my high school science classes when we would dissect a frog or something like that. So,
Sure.
I shifted towards finance and went to, that's one of the reasons I chose Drake, because they had a great finance program. And specifically theirs was a little more geared towards investing. And one of the designations that I have and that I initially strove for was the CFA designation, Chartered Financial Analyst. And that's a very investment focused designation, and it can take a minimum of 3 years to get that after college. It can take longer than that as well, but I thought I was going to be a stock analyst and work for a big investment company and just kind of be a research person, with my head down in a spreadsheet and diving into the numbers and trying to pick the best stocks or bonds or whatever type of security to invest in. And I actually did that for a short period of time. I worked for a large investment company in town in their investment department and got a little taste of that. But I did get my CFA designation. So I was all going down that path. And then all of a sudden I kind of realized it wasn't as satisfying as I had hoped. And I think I had pinpointed that I was spending too much time at my desk and in spreadsheets, where I did really enjoy more interaction with people. And I was lucky enough that I did have a internship at my current company at Syverson Strege. So I did get a little bit of a taste of what financial planners do, and meeting with individuals and families and having a more direct impact on their life. And I just kept being drawn towards that side of the business. And so I did decide to shift a little bit and pursue my CFP designation, Certified Financial Planner, which is geared towards more financial planning and helping individuals
Sure.
and families.
Was there anything that you thought that stood out as you kind of got into this business that you thought maybe you'd want to be even at a younger age? Was there anything that stood out as really like, hey, this was better than I expected, or perhaps a lot worse than I expected?
Yeah. I would say the job I have right now is a perfect combination for me. I guess I'll kind of answer the question that way, in that I, really like helping individuals and working on that side of the business. But I also like the research side of things. And I lead our investment team here, so I can also do the research of things in addition to kind of working one-on-one with people. So I guess maybe for things I didn't expect, I guess I didn't expect initially how kind of non-personable the business can be in certain areas of it.
Right.
But then there's definitely a whole other side where you're working with people. And I guess maybe one other thing I would say there is I didn't quite realize how much sales can be a part of the industry, and selling products, or even just going out there and finding people to work with in general. You kind of have to be a salesperson. And our business, our company, is a little more unique in that way, I think, in that we tend to get business. It's a collective effort, and we have a marketing department. We even have hired some business development people who would be in the community to try to get us business. And for me, who I'm kind of toe the line between an introvert and an extrovert, and going to get business on my own is something that's not very appealing to me. I love working with people, but actually having to go find clients isn't how I want to spend a lot of my time. And so that's why this company's been a good fit for me as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that you're echoing, I think, what a lot of people experience. You probably had a more true path towards financial planning than most. I think a lot of people start with, an insurance company out of the gate, or they're told the story of investing, and then it's more about, like you said, the marketing and the door knocking and the cold calling and all the stuff that maybe you're really good at the actual business, but not all of that other stuff. And it kind of, you need that to be successful, at least out of the gate, particularly if you're not in the right spot that can put people in front of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we've hired people from a lot of different backgrounds, and it can be a second career for many people.
Sure. So you kind of already touched on this. Your title, Chief Investment Officer / financial planner, and then you have a handful of letters behind your name. Of course, the designations. So I guess two-part question. The designations you touched on a little bit, but can you clarify the designations you have again real quick? And then maybe just real quick, what a typical day looks like in your world, if there is such a thing?
Sure, you bet. So the two primary designations that I have, the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, that is the one that is geared more towards investing.
And you said that was a 3-year program?
It's a minimum of 3-year program. You do have to have a degree to sit for the exams, and there's 3 levels of exams. And they used to only offer these exams once a year. So if you didn't pass, and the exams only had about a 40 to 50% pass rate, you would have to wait another year to take it again. So that's why it took some people many years to get through the program. I know one of my friends, it took her 10 years to get through the program, and God bless her, she stuck with it and
wow,
and finished it. And then the other one is the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner, which is a little more broad based on the topics of financial planning. So that can get into cash flow and tax planning, retirement planning, insurance, estate planning, investments, very wide ranging. And that's the designation that we prefer people to get at our company, to be able to sit down with people
Sure.
to do their personal financial planning. And that, that's not a cakewalk either, but that can be accomplished, I think, in a year to get that designation.
Yeah, not being able to retake that first test you were talking about for a full year. You said they've since changed that, but that's a testament to your friend's persistency more than anything. Taking
Absolutely.
10 years to do it and still sticking with it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember. And I did that right after college. So luckily I was still in study mode, but I remember
Right.
from about January to June, every night and then weekend I was studying. So we all throw a pretty big party after the studying is over.
Right.
And then I do have a third designation. It's called the CAP, and that is a Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. And that is a little more geared towards charitable strategies and helping people if they're going to donate money to charity, how to do it in an impactful way. And both from kind of what to give, how to give. And then there's a number of different charitable vehicles out there that many are not aware of. But they can be vehicles that provide tax deductions, and maybe even personal income can come back to you, as well as giving, of course, money to charity as part of that tool. So
yeah,
that program, it takes, maybe a few months to get. It's a little bit easier to obtain, but I found a nice specialty to have.
Yeah, I was talking with John Syverson about that one maybe that was a couple months ago now, but thought that would be a good one to add. Just, I kind of, at a certain point, you have enough letters behind your name, but if you have a thirst for learning, you're just going to kind of keep going in a lot of ways. So,
yeah, exactly. A lot of times it's not about the letters, but it's just about the continuing education.
Right.
And we're all doing that throughout our entire careers.
Right. So part 2 of that question, I don't know if there's a good answer to this, but a typical work day for you, is there such a thing as a typical day or a typical week? Some of it sounds like it's with clients. Some of it's more kind of your nose in the
Yeah.
computer. I was going to say books, but it's probably more the computer now.
Yeah, there is, I guess, more of a typical day. And usually I will have at least one client meeting a day. And so those would usually last a couple hours, where I'd be sitting down with people and either reviewing. We tend to meet with people a couple times a year. One meeting is very broad-based to review their entire financial plan, and one meeting is more focused to just review their investment portfolio. And so I usually will have 1 to 2 of those meetings per day. And then the other part of my day, I like to joke that I am a professional emailer, just because it seems like, I think that's something we all struggle with, is just constantly responding to emails. But the other part of my responsibilities, I lead our investment team here. So it's putting together our investment strategies that we use with our clients, monitoring them on an ongoing basis, doing the due diligence on new offerings out there. And so that does take up a lot of my time, which is something I really enjoy. And then I can't believe I've worked here now almost 20 years, which means I must be getting old, but I have more of a leadership role now. So I spend some of my time in leadership meetings and kind of doing some more operational things for the company.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because both John Syverson and Dave Strege are kind of transitioning into retirement, and I imagine the company name will still remain because you guys have such a positive presence out there. But yeah, that'll be a change, I suppose, for the office.
It will be a big change. John Syverson, he's still here. He still has an office, but he's no longer has any clients. And David Strege is scheduled to retire next year. So they've just been pillars of our office. Of course, they founded the company more than 25 years ago. And we are just very fortunate that they're still around and are still going to be strategic advisors for us, and on our board, so that we can, ask them questions as we need to.
Yeah. And, it's good to have those periods of transition where it's not one day you're there, one day you're out. Obviously they want the place to succeed with their names on it too, but sounds like they could step away and things will continue to turn along, move along well.
I think they're confident of that. And both of them had transition plans that spanned several years
Sure.
phase out of their client load. So it's never easy, but I think they would say it's definitely probably gone smoother than we would have expected.
Oh, good. Well, how about we pivot to this idea of the sabbatical? So maybe let's start with how that first came about, the idea for that.
Yeah, I was trying to remember how we originally got the idea, but I am a member of a study group of advisors in the Midwest. There's about 10 of us located in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. And we get together quarterly to share just best practices from a wide range of topics of being in a financial planning business. And one of those advisors brought up the idea. I think their company, they either had it or they were thinking about enacting the sabbatical program. And we certainly thought it was an interesting idea. And, this got brought up right around the time of the pandemic.
Okay.
And, just with the workplace changing of being more flexible, of remote work and having more meetings on Zoom. So our company, just like every company, had to navigate through that. And the way we settled out is we allow people to work from home about 1 day a week on average. So I know many other workplaces allow their employees to work from home much more often. We like to provide a lot of flexibility for people to work from home, but that was one area where we maybe were a little more strict than others of having people come into the office.
Sure.
And we thought, well, just one angle of it was for, employee health and attracting new employees as well. We thought this would be just a great benefit that we could offer. And when we announced it, it was overwhelmingly positive. People were just very excited about it.
So this wasn't a personal Jason Gunkel idea. This was, at least you were the first to do it though, right?
I volunteered to be the guinea pig to try it out.
Okay.
I said, let me take 6 weeks off and I'll tell you how it is. But yeah, I was one of the first people to do it. And we did it by seniority. And I happened to be, I guess, one of the more senior people.
Sure.
So I did it first. But I guess I could explain a little bit of how we structured it as well. And we allow people who have worked here for 5 years to take a sabbatical. And after that 5th year, it's a period of 4 weeks that you get off work. It's one continuous stretch. And there's really no rules around it, except we do want our employees to unplug. And so we don't want them to have any contact with the office or with their email or with clients. And so we do ask them to completely unplug.
Can be a little scary as an advisor.
It's scary. Some people have already said they might not participate in the program because it's too scary.
So did you have to do a lot of prep leading up to that date? Because it's 6 weeks you're unplugged, right?
That's right. And then once you hit kind of that 10-year mark, we extend it to 6 weeks that you get off. Yep. And so I did a lot of prep. We have our client meetings kind of mapped out as far as which clients are supposed to come in and which month. And so I knew I had, a handful of meetings during that 6 weeks. I would estimate, gosh, I probably had 20 meetings I had to prepare for. So I did a lot of them ahead of time. I thought it would be less stressful if I did the meeting before I left rather than kind of scramble and be really busy after I got back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I did the majority of them before I left. So there was quite a bit of preparation in that regard. And then, for some, one side benefit of the program is I'll just briefly explain. We work in teams of 2 here. So, and every client that we work with, I have kind of a associate planner as well that is on a career path to become a lead planner. And many times that person is a certified financial planner. And so if it was a client that my associate had worked with for many years, I would have them, while I was gone, be the lead in that particular meeting. And I thought that was just a great way to also have other people step up and develop
Sure.
if they had to kind of start leading some meetings as well. So I think that is another side benefit of the program.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a good team around you to make that work. What about the emails? How did that work? Someone monitoring those for you as well?
We have an email buddy. And so somebody
Okay.
would go in and check our emails. If it wasn't daily, at least it was, a couple times a week. But,
Okay.
the email thing can be scary, but I think setting your out of office email, and we also sent letters to our clients notifying them that we would be taking this sabbatical.
Oh, okay.
And, our clients were just so supportive of it. They were excited that we were going to be gone.
Sure.
And, if any questions popped up, they can always contact the associate planner or someone else at our company, and someone's willing to help. So that was never really an issue
Yeah.
while we were away.
And what, I guess, to get to the meat of it, what exactly did you do during your 6 weeks?
Yeah. So I spent some time planning this out, being a financial planner. I was going to spend the time, and I decided I was going to travel for half of it. So I traveled for 3 out of the 6 weeks, and I split it up. So I took one trip with just me and my wife. One trip we did a family vacation, and then one trip was just with a friend, and kind of truly unplugging in that trip. So
Yeah.
I would say the first week of the sabbatical was a little rough. It takes a little bit of time to adjust, I would say, and get comfortable kind of not responding to email. And then also my wife had a training for work, so she was gone, and I was in charge of all 3 kids for a week. So I got a little taste of what, single parenthood is about, or a stay-at-home
Sure.
parent. And I was actually begging maybe to get back to the office after that first week.
You're thinking this is a disaster after 1 week, and
Yeah, this is a total disaster. This is never going to work. But luckily my wife came back. As usual, she saved the day, and everything was good again.
we talked about this a little bit, for probably a few months ago, though, and you also did some kind of additional unplugging. It wasn't just necessarily from work, but you kind of used it as a sabbatical, even on a larger scale, right?
Yeah, I did. And I guess, the best trip I took was I took a week in the Canadian Rockies,
Oh, cool.
and I happened to go with a friend who's also a coworker who was on his sabbatical too. I guess we couldn't stay away from each other for that long, but we kind of had, we have a lot of similar interests, and we had similar ideas of what we wanted to do. He wanted to go actual backpacking and camping. I was all for unplugging and kind of getting out into nature, but my requirement was that we stay at like a nice lodge that had a nice meal for us at night and kind of a nice bed. So
You're like one step at a time, right?
got to ease into that. Yeah. So we decided to take a trip in the Canadian Rockies. We went through a company called Backroads,
Hmm.
and they lead these trips all throughout the world, actually. And I guess that was, met every expectation and then some. But taking a guided trip like this is nice. There was 2 young ladies who took care of our every need as far as lugging our suitcases from place to place, and taking care of all the logistics. But this trip really, every day we were either hiking, biking. We did a day of rafting. We did a day we even got to walk on top of a glacier. But
so being in nature was a big part of it too.
yes, definitely a big part of it. And we stayed in some nice cabins, but it was easier to unplug.
Yeah.
Where you didn't have a lot of the distractions, you didn't have the TV. We still had our phones, but
yeah,
we could more easily turn those off.
So I guess the $1,000,000 question did anything stick, or did you feel like there's a lasting impact from doing this, or was it more just the experience itself? How do you view that?
Yeah. So, I do think it was very rejuvenating. I will say the whole thing, very refreshing. You get to take a step back and just reflect on a lot of things. You get to reflect, what you're doing at work. Are these the things I want to be doing? And then personally, am I accomplishing the things I want to accomplish? And I did read a book while I was on sabbatical, and I want to promote the book because it was a very good read, and I think it's something that just resonates today with a lot of people. It was called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Okay.
It was written by a young pastor. His name is John Mark Comer. And the subtitle is How to Stay Emotionally and Spiritually Healthy in the kind of modern world of chaos. And, I think, just to speak for a minute, spiritually for myself, the way that I think I'm attacked by the dark side is by busyness. Sure. And just, the devil kind of making me too busy from really doing good in the world. And, I think for a lot of people, the devil knows I'm cross my fingers here. I'm not going to go down too dark of a path. I'm not going to sway too much outside of my faith. But I think he attacks a lot of people by making us too busy, and everybody just feels busy and stressed. And if I'm distracted, there's so many distractions today. If I'm distracted by something, I'm not able to do God's work or the work that God wants me to do. And so this book was really all about that and gave some really practical tips about how to be less busy. And
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a really good read. And some of it, I was familiar with, and some of it was new to me. But I think finding a rhythm of rest is really important. And that rhythm, it starts, I think, on a day-to-day basis, and daily, finding quiet time. And that can mean different things to different people. Maybe it's, just taking a walk or meditating. And for me, it's getting into scripture and, spending time with God each day. But that's something, the church that I attend, they encourage that every day.
Yeah,
and then
good.
Weekly, it's really abiding by the Sabbath day, once a week, just finding time for yourself and for your family to unplug and doing things you enjoy, I think, is really what the Sabbath is about. And not having to stress for one day a week. It's kind of a gift that God gives us.
Right.
And we often, almost view it as I have to do this, where in reality it's I get to do this.
Yeah.
And it's truly a gift to just spend one day a week unplugging and doing something we enjoy. And then it also talks about longer periods of rest and the sabbatical, would fall into that category. And, maybe there's only 4% of companies, I think I read, that offer a sabbatical program. So most people don't get that, but we can still take, vacation time and take some extended periods off. And I think those are important to unplug as well. And I think the majority of people also don't take advantage of their days off of work, and we kind of bank up, several days, but I think it's important. Take those days, take some extended time off, and get that rest.
Taking it the right way too, right? Because sometimes you take a vacation and then you need rest after your vacation. Depending on how we spend our vacations, they're not always very restful.
That's a great point. And I also, somebody gave me the advice somewhere to take a trip that's longer than a week, take a couple weeks off, and maybe you are traveling for a week, but yeah, it's that week of actually resting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting how you were mentioning, about rest on the Sabbath. And I was just talking with another guy that was speaking a lot of the same points that you were in a morning group. And it's like that day of rest, that's one of the 10 commandments, right? Yet, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Yeah, that seems to be the one that people easily kind of like, okay, a lot of them are really serious, but that's one I can kind of push aside, and I can do a bunch of work on Sunday or whenever you honor the Sabbath. So, but I think you're right. I think it's there for our benefit, not to, it's a get to.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
It's easy to brush that one aside. But in today's world, I think we need it.
Yeah. So did you feel like anything really stuck long term, or is it maybe it's a little bit like working out? Like you can't do it just once. You have to come back to these principles of rest. Or did you see, maybe your wife would be a better one to ask this question to?
Well,
did she see any changes?
That's a good question. You should ask her. But as you were asking that, I was pulling up my list. So I kept a list of things I wanted to accomplish during my sabbatical. Let's do a little accountability session.
Okay.
See how I'm doing. But let's see. I said I did want to do the daily quiet time. And I would say I'm pretty good at that. So
okay.
I'd give myself a passing grade on that. Okay, I wanted to take a morning walk. That was a fail, but I would say it's been the winter time, so I'm going to give
temperatures are changing. It should be easier here now shortly.
We'll see if I can get into that routine. I wanted to train for a 10K. Okay, I'm currently training for a 10K, so that doing that. Let's see. I wanted to try out intermittent fasting, and I've actually stuck with that. That's been a positive thing, so that was good. I wanted to clean out.
Is that from like nothing before noon and nothing after 7 p.m. or something along those lines?
Yeah, it's kind of eating in 8-hour chunks, I guess, of the day, but
yeah,
there's supposed to be some health benefits to it, and so far that's gone well. I wanted to clean out my closet, which I had a lot of stuff out there to clean out and donate, and so I guess I got that done. But some of the stuff, I guess those were kind of, to-dos to check off the list. At work, I really wanted to reduce my client load because I thought I was actually too busy at work and I couldn't get the things done. So that, talked to the leadership team here, and I'm working on reducing some of my client load just so I'm not quite as busy at the office and can be more intentional about things I'm doing.
That's probably a tough one to do because you feel this relationship with those clients, but at a certain point, if it's putting too much stress on you, it's not necessarily good for them either.
It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's so hard after you develop a relationship. You don't want to give up any clients. And I think I said, okay, I'm going to give up 30 clients. So I went and looked at my list and I came up with 5 people. So that takes a lot of work just to, trust that someone else can take good care of them as well.
Right.
And then I guess just spiritually too, the one thing I really was trying to discern while I was on sabbatical is an area that God wanted me to devote some time to, on a volunteer basis. And I think I was able to figure some of that out. And I ended up joining our kind of mission and care team at church. And I heard a calling to visit people in the hospital and do some hospital visits and prayer for them. And so I've started doing that. I've started, we have a great care team through our church, and most days of the month are covered with people visiting others in the hospital. I've started doing that once a month, and it's been a true blessing.
Yeah, that's cool.
For myself as well.
Well, it sounds like you've really, done pretty well on the goals that you set then.
I guess I'll give myself a passing grade. But I think it's, something that has to be revisited every so often, and trying to stay with those healthy rhythms of rest.
And then maybe I didn't catch this towards the beginning of our talk, but did you say how often you will personally have the opportunity to do this, or how often each person who's been there 10 years or longer?
Yeah, it's every 5 years.
Okay.
And so every 5 years we'll get that 4 to 6 weeks off as a sabbatical. But I think, it's important too that even every year I'm going to take a little longer extended vacation, whether that's, for 10 days or 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah. And I haven't looked at any of the research on this, but I would bet that some of this can be pretty beneficial to the companies themselves too, because you have less burnout, probably more positive attitude. Maybe people who are thinking about getting away from the job or retiring can stick it out a lot longer if they have some of those opportunities.
Yeah. We'll see. There's only been a few people that have taken it at our office, so we don't have any big major takeaways yet. Other than people are really excited about doing it, and I think they get to take some trips they've maybe dreamed about taking, but they thought they maybe wouldn't be able to do it until retirement. And so one of the big values of our company has definitely been a work-life balance. And we've seen too many clients pass away at a young age, and we definitely think people have to enjoy life while they can.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think too often too, you work, people work their whole lives for this pile of money. They can finally go out and enjoy it and travel and do all this stuff with it. And then, we never know where our health is going to be at that point. That's about the saddest thing is when someone finally has what they can, enough money to do what they want to do, and then their health isn't there with it.
Yeah, it's so sad to see that. And after retirement, there's only so many years that people are physically able to kind of get around.
Sure.
But I think the younger generations are looking at work differently, and maybe, they get a hard time for doing that. But overall, it's probably a positive thing. There's some traction, I think, out there of going to a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
I met one nonprofit that they have a very stressful job of helping those in need, and they give everybody Friday off, and they said it's needed just so they get an extra day of rest for their mental health.
Interesting.
And so
it really boils down to how we're using our time too, right? Because one person could have that extra Friday and be just as burnt out come Monday and just use it as another day to burn themselves out, and someone else could use it in a really positive way.
That's very true. And I think some people's home life is more stressful sometimes than their work life. It just depends on also, what season of life you're in as well. But try to be as intentional as possible with that time.
Yep. We probably all spend our time a little differently in our 30s, 40s, 50s thereafter than maybe we did in our 20s or so. But as we kind of pivot here or wrap up, any final thoughts, anything you had that you wanted to share regarding the sabbatical side of thing, kind of the work-life balance idea before we pivot into a little bit about the firm over there?
I think that I think we touched on about everything. I don't know
Okay.
if I would add anything, but yeah, I would just say it's made a big difference in my life to have some of those healthy rhythms, and I would encourage others to kind of do the same.
Okay. Well, good. It'll be interesting to hear how that progresses as more and more people at your firm have that experience, and maybe you can compare notes and people will start to have a better idea how to prepare for it, what to try to accomplish going into it so that it doesn't just end up being time off, but something really valuable. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear how that progresses for you guys.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. After we get more people that have done it, I think we'll have a little group and share best practices about it.
Yep. Yep. You bet. Hey, everyone. This is Loren again here. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jason, but we are going to put a pin in the conversation and come back in 2 weeks for the conclusion of our talk. Our next episode will wrap up with a short conversation about the firm Jason is with called Syverson Strege. We talk about how they are different and what they do best, the type of clients they serve, and just try to give a general feel for the culture and the firm itself. So come back for that one in just 2 weeks. And as always, you can find past episodes at our website, integrityguidance.com. Thanks for listening, and God bless.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, we would love if you took a quick moment to leave an honest review. Of course, we're shooting for 5 stars, but if you have suggestions to improve the show, we would love to hear from you too. Just click on the podcast name, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, and scroll down to ratings and review. Thanks again for your support, as this helps us reach a wider audience and help even more retirees just like you. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Loren Sherman is a certified financial planner and co-owner of Integrity Wealth Management, an investment advisor serving retirees in search of their own healthy, wealthy, and wise retirement lifestyle.